Nobody saw it coming. Not the Galactic Council. Not the 7 civilizations that had been fighting this war for 30 years. Not the commanders who had lost entire fleets, entire worlds, entire species to an enemy that could not be stopped. Nobody. The enemy had a name. They were called the Wrath, and they had never lost a single battle. Not once. In 3 decades of galactic war, they had destroyed over 4,000 ships. They had wiped out 12 planets. They had pushed the most advanced civilizations in the known universe to the very edge of total extinction. The galaxy was desperate. The galaxy was dying. And when every option had been exhausted, when every great military power had fallen to its knees, someone finally made the call that most considered a bad joke. They called humanity. Humanity had been watching this war from the sidelines. Earth was considered primitive, weak, barely worth noticing. So when the Galactic Council begged for help, nobody expected much. But humanity did not send an army. It did not send a fleet of warships. It sent one ship. Just one. And what happened next changed the galaxy forever. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The war had started simply enough, the way most terrible things do. 32 years before the events of this story, a small mining colony on the edge of known space went silent. No distress signal. No warning. Just silence. One day the colony was there, sending routine reports back to the Galactic Council. The next day it was gone. The Galactic Council sent a patrol ship to investigate. That ship never came back either. Then they sent a fleet. Half of that fleet returned. The other half was simply gone, like dust blown away by wind. The survivors could barely speak. The ones who could speak said only one word over and over again. Wrath. 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 Nobody had heard that word before. Nobody knew what it meant. But within a year, everyone in the galaxy knew it. The Wrath were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. They did not negotiate. They did not communicate. They did not take prisoners. They simply arrived, destroyed everything in their path, and moved on. Their ships were massive, dark, built from a material that absorbed energy weapons like a sponge. Standard laser cannons barely scratched them. Missile strikes seemed to annoy them more than damage them. Their own weapons were something else entirely. A single Wrath warship could fire a beam of compressed dark energy that could cut a standard cruiser in half in under 2 seconds. The Calvari were the first great civilization to fall. They were considered the best military power in the known galaxy. Their fleet numbered over 3,000 warships. Their soldiers had been training for war since birth. Their technology was centuries ahead of most species. It did not matter. The Wrath moved through the Calvari home system like fire moves through dry grass. In 72 hours, the Calvari homeworld was gone. 3,000 warships became floating debris fields. Then came the Theshan Collective. Then the Morvac Empire. Then the Gelian Star Federation. Each one fell faster than the last. The galaxy watched in horror as civilization after civilization crumbled. Some species fled to hidden systems. Some tried to surrender. The Wrath did not accept surrender. They simply destroyed everything and kept moving. By the time the Galactic Council called an emergency session, they had already lost 7 member civilizations. What remained were fragments, scattered survivors, broken fleets assembled from whatever ships had not yet been destroyed. The council chamber on Vareth Station was packed that day. Representatives from 9 surviving civilizations crowded around the great circular table. Some had traveled weeks to be there. Some had barely escaped their home systems with their lives. The mood was not simply dark. It was beyond dark. It was the kind of despair that comes when people realize that hope might actually be gone for good. Grand Commander Tesho of the Aurelian Alliance stood at the head of the table. She was old, even by Aurelian standards. Her 4 eyes were ringed with exhaustion. Her silver ceremonial robes were stained from a battlefield she had escaped from just days before. She looked at the people around that table, and she said something that none of them wanted to hear. She said they had maybe 3 months before the Wrath reached the core systems. She said that based on current fleet numbers and available firepower, the probability of stopping the next Wrath advance was less than 2%. She said they were out of options. The room went completely silent. Then someone at the far end of the table spoke up. His name was Ambassador Drevin. He was the council liaison for a small, obscure system on the Outer Rim. A system most of the council barely remembered was even part of the Alliance. He said there was one option nobody had considered. He said they should call the humans. The laughter that followed was genuine. It was the kind of desperate, exhausted laughter people produce when something is so absurd it actually relieves tension for a moment. Humans, the primitive species on that little blue world, the ones who still used chemical combustion rockets, the ones who had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel. Those humans. Ambassador Drevin did not laugh. He waited for the room to quiet down. Then he placed a single data file on the council's shared display. He said, "Read this first." The file was 47 pages long. It contained sensor data, battle recordings, and intelligence reports gathered over the previous decade by a small team of Aurelian observers stationed near human space. Most council members had never seen this file before. It had been classified at the highest level and buried deep in the council archives. What it contained changed the mood in that room very quickly. Humans had been watching the war. Not passively, not with fear. They had been studying it. Every battle the Wrath had fought, humans had obtained recordings. They had analyzed the Wrath weapon systems. They had studied the Wrath ship design. They had pulled apart every piece of sensor data available and run calculations that the Council's own military scientists had not thought to run. But that was not the surprising part. The surprising part was what humans had built. Deep inside, massive shipyard hidden beneath the ocean floor off the coast of what humans called the Pacific, engineers and scientists had been working on something for 11 years. A project so classified that fewer than 200 people on the entire planet knew it existed. A project simply called the Defiance Program. The result of that program was a single ship. It was not the biggest ship the galaxy had ever seen. It was not even close to the largest human vessel ever built. It was roughly the same size as a mid-range Calvary cruiser. To look at it floating in space, you would think it was unremarkable. Plain, almost, angular, gray, with none of the sweeping, elegant lines of Aurelian warships or the brutal, jagged mass of Morvac battle cruisers. But what was inside that ship was something the galaxy had never seen before. Because humans had figured something out that every other civilization had missed. They had studied every single Wrath battle recording and noticed a pattern. A pattern so subtle, so deep in the data, that you would only find it if you were looking for weaknesses rather than strengths. Every other civilization had studied the Wrath, trying to understand their power. Humans had studied the Wrath, trying to understand their weakness. And they had found one. Grand Commander Tesho read the file 3 times before she set it down. Then she looked at Ambassador Drevin and asked how quickly the humans could deploy this ship. Drevin said it was already built. The vote to contact humanity was not unanimous. 3 council members refused. They said sending one small human ship against the Wrath was not a strategy. It was theater. It was a gesture. It was a waste of the limited time they had left. But they were outvoted. The communication reached Earth 12 hours later. In a secure facility outside Washington, a small group of human military officials and government representatives gathered to receive the Council's formal request. The message was long. It was desperate. It listed the civilizations that had been lost. It described the current state of the war. It said that the Galactic Council believed humanity might have developed a solution that no other species had managed to find. It formally requested that humanity deploy whatever it had. The lead human official, a woman named General Sandra Reyes, listened to the entire message without speaking. Then she asked her team to leave the room. She sat alone for 11 minutes. When she called her team back in, she had made her decision. She said yes, but she did not promise a fleet. She did not promise an army. She told the council that humanity would send one ship. Just one, and she said that one ship would be enough. There was no arrogance in her voice when she said it. It was the calm, quiet certainty of someone who has done the math and knows the answer. The council received this response with mixed reactions. Some were relieved. Some were confused. Some were quietly furious. One Vrath battle group alone contained over 80 warships, and humanity was offering one. None of them could have understood what was about to happen. The ship launched from its hidden facility 4 days later. Its name was painted on the side in simple letters. UES Defiance. United Earth Ship Defiance. It slipped out of Earth's orbit at 0300 local time, turned its nose toward the front lines of the galactic war, and accelerated into the dark. The UES Defiance arrived at Varath Station 18 days later. Captain James Aucaffer had commanded the Defiance since its first day of testing. He was 44 years old. Quiet, precise, and completely unhurried in a way that some people mistook for arrogance and others mistook for stupidity. He had spent 6 years overseeing the Defiance program. He knew every system on that ship better than most engineers knew their own designs. When the Defiance docked at Varath Station, a small welcoming party was assembled. Mostly curious, a few openly skeptical. One Morvac military official had reportedly laughed when he first saw the ship on approach, saying it looked like a supply freighter compared to the warships he had commanded. Captain Aucaffer stepped off the ship alone. He shook hands. He nodded politely. He accepted the council's formal welcome with appropriate courtesy. Then he asked for a briefing room and the latest tactical data on the Vrath advance. The briefing lasted 6 hours. At the end of it, Aucaffer looked at the holographic map of the Vrath's projected advance and pointed to a specific region of space. A wide debris field near a destroyed star system called Kelver. The Vrath had destroyed Kelver 6 months earlier and were expected to pass through that region again within 2 weeks, using it as a staging ground for the next phase of their advance toward the core systems. He said that was where he would meet them. Grand Commander Tesho asked him directly. She asked how one ship intended to stop an entire Vrath battle group. She did not ask this to be dismissive. She asked because she genuinely wanted to understand. Aucaffer pulled up a data display. He walked her through what human analysts had discovered. The pattern buried inside every Vrath battle recording. He explained it in plain, clear language. He did not use complex technical terms. He did not dress it up. He just laid out the facts. The room was very quiet when he finished. Tesho asked if he was certain. He said he was as certain as the math allowed, and the math was solid. She asked what the risk was if he was wrong. He said if he was wrong, one ship would be destroyed, and the war would continue exactly as it had been. But if he was right, everything would change. She approved the mission. 3 days later, the Defiance left Varath Station and headed for the Kelver debris field. Nobody on the council actually expected it to work. The Vrath battle group arrived at Kelver on schedule. 87 warships, moving in their standard formation. Dark hulls cutting through the dead star debris field like enormous predators. Their sensor sweeps were constant, automatic, and perfect. They detected the Defiance within minutes of entering the region. One human ship, sitting in the debris field, not hiding, not running, just sitting there, engines on standby, weapon systems powered down. The Wrath command vessel broke from formation and approached. The remaining 86 ships held position. There was no urgency, no alarm. To the Wrath, this made no sense. What was this small ship doing here? Was it damaged? Was it a distress vessel? It was clearly not a threat. Nothing that small could be a threat. They sent no communication. The Wrath never did. But their approach was slow, which for them was unusual. Cautious, almost. Inside the Defiance, Captain Aukaffer stood on the bridge and watched the Wrath command vessel close the distance. His crew was silent. Every station was manned. Every system was ready. He waited until the Wrath command vessel was exactly 14,000 kilometers away. Then he gave one word. Now. What happened in the next 90 seconds would later be described by every species who studied it as the most precise, most calculated, and most devastating single-ship engagement in recorded galactic history. The Defiance did not fire its weapons first. Instead, it broadcast a signal, a very specific signal, a tight beam pulse of compressed electromagnetic radiation aimed directly at the Wrath command vessel. To any observer watching from the outside, it looked like a simple sensor ping. Harmless, almost routine. But it was not routine. This was what humans had found buried in the data. This was the weakness that every other civilization had missed because they were too busy studying how to match Wrath firepower. The Wrath ships were networked. All of them, every ship in a battle group, was linked to the command vessel through a quantum communication web. This web was what made them so effective in battle. Commands moved through the group instantly. Every ship reacted simultaneously. They moved as one. They fired as one. They thought as one. It was their greatest strength. Humans had realized it was also their greatest weakness. Because the quantum communication web, as perfect as it was, operated on a frequency that could be interrupted. Not jammed, not blocked, interrupted. Specifically and surgically disrupted for exactly 4.3 seconds if you knew the precise resonance frequency, and you hit it with the right kind of pulse. Human engineers had calculated that frequency over 6 years of analysis. The Defiance had just broadcast it directly into the Wrath command vessel. For 4.3 seconds, every Wrath ship in that battle group was alone. No network, no shared commands, no synchronized response. 87 ships suddenly operating as 87 separate units instead of one unified force. In those 4.3 seconds, the Defiance did 3 things. First, it fired a spread of 12 precision kinetic impactors directly at the command vessel. Not energy weapons, not lasers, physical projectiles made from tungsten iridium composite traveling at a speed of 40 kilometers per second. The Wrath hull material was designed to absorb and disperse energy. Nobody had ever tried physical kinetic strikes at that velocity. The command vessel took all 12 hits in a pattern that the Defiance's targeting system had calculated over 3,000 simulations. The command vessel did not explode, but its core navigation and weapons control systems went dark. Second, the Defiance fired a wide dispersal electromagnetic burst that would have been completely useless against a networked Wrath battle group, but was catastrophic against isolated, uncoordinated individual ships. Without the network to compensate, 6 Wrath ships close to the command vessel suffered immediate system failures. Third, and this was the part that nobody outside the Defiance program had anticipated, the ship released 412 autonomous micro-drones, each one the size of a standard human briefcase, each one carrying a micro-warhead, each one targeted at a specific critical system on a specific Wrath vessel based on 6 years of targeting analysis. The drones spread through the debris field in under 8 seconds. The 4.3-second interruption window closed. The Vrath network came back online. But it was too late. The micro-drones hit 31 Vrath ships in the same moment, not destroying them outright, targeting their propulsion systems, their weapons arrays, their communication nodes. Precise, calculated, surgical strikes. The kind of strikes you can only make when you have spent 6 years studying exactly where to hit. 31 ships went dark. The remaining ships tried to respond. They turned their weapons toward the Defiance. But the Defiance was already moving. Captain Okafor had designed an evasion pattern based on Vrath targeting behavior. The Vrath fired dozens of dark energy beams. The Defiance slipped between them, using the debris field as cover, using the predictable Vrath firing patterns that humans had studied in thousands of hours of battle recordings. Okafor broadcast the disruption pulse a second time. Another 4.3 seconds. Another wave of kinetic impactors. Another drone spread. Another 44 ships crippled. The Vrath were adapting. They were fast, but adapting takes time. And for the first time in 32 years of war, the Vrath did not have enough time. The battle lasted 4 hours and 17 minutes. Not the 90 seconds of the opening strike. 4 hours, because the Vrath were not a species that gave up. They were not a species that fled. Even crippled, even confused, even with their legendary network disrupted again and again by a ship they had dismissed as no threat. They fought back with everything they had. 17 times, the Defiance came close to being destroyed. One dark energy beam clipped the ship's rear section and knocked out 2 of its 4 engine pods. 3 of the bridge crew were injured. A secondary power conduit exploded and took out the port weapons array completely. Captain Okafor fought that ship like it was an extension of his own body. Every maneuver calculated. Every risk weighed and accepted. Every system pushed to its absolute maximum. His crew did not panic. These were people who had trained for this mission for years. They had run simulations so many times that even when the ship was taking real fire in real combat, muscle memory took over. Damage control teams moved through smoke-filled corridors and made repairs under fire that kept systems running that had every right to be dead. Slowly, ship by ship, the Vrath battle group was dismantled. Not all of them destroyed. The Defiance could not destroy 87 Vrath warships alone. That was never the plan. But crippled ships could not advance. Crippled ships could not fire accurately. Crippled ships could not coordinate. And as the hours passed, the battle group that had arrived with perfect formation and absolute confidence became something that had never happened in 32 years of war. It became a retreat. 3 Vrath ships managed to restore full function and pull back from the debris field. Okafor let them go. He had calculated from the beginning that some would escape. That was fine. The ones that escaped would carry data back to wherever the Vrath came from. They would carry the sensor recordings of what one human ship had done. They would carry the memory of the disruption pulse, the kinetic impactors, the drones. They would carry fear. The remaining 84 ships were adrift in the Kelver debris field. Some completely powerless, some with minimal life support, some with skeleton crews trying to manually restart systems that had been surgically destroyed. They posed no threat. Not to the Defiance. Not to anyone. Captain Okafor sent a short message to Varath Station from a damage report interface, since the main communications array had taken a hit. The message contained 2 sentences. Battle group neutralized. Proceed with recovery operations. When the message arrived at Varath Station, the council chamber fell into complete silence. Not the silence of despair. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of people who are trying to understand something they do not yet have words for. Grand Commander Tesho read the message twice. She pulled up the live sensor feed from the Kelver debris field. She looked at what 84 Vrath warships drifting dead in space looked like. She had been in this war for 20 years. She had seen planets die. She had watched species she had known all her life be erased from the galaxy. She had sat in this council chamber and told these people they had a 2% chance of survival. She did not speak for a long time. When she did, her voice was steady. She said she wanted every remaining fleet in the Alliance to be given full access to the Defiance program data. She said she wanted human engineers on every shipyard that was still operational within 30 days. She said that for the first time in 32 years, she believed this war was not over. The Vrath did not disappear after Kelver. They were not broken by one battle. But Kelver changed something that no weapon had been able to change before. It changed what the galaxy believed was possible. It cracked the idea that the Vrath were unstoppable. And ideas, once cracked, have a way of collapsing completely. Over the following 14 months, a dozen new warships were built using human tactical designs. The disruption pulse technology was refined and scaled. The kinetic impactor system was adapted for larger vessels. Human engineers worked alongside Aurelian, Morvek, Angelian builders in shipyards across the surviving Alliance systems. They argued constantly. They disagreed about everything. They worked 18-hour days and slept in their clothes and built something together that none of them could have built alone. The second major battle happened near a system called Venthar. The Alliance fleet that fought it had 40 ships. 12 of them were new design. All 40 came home. The Vrath lost 61. After Venthar, 2 more Vrath advances were stopped before they reached populated systems. Casualty rates among Alliance forces dropped sharply. The Vrath were still dangerous. They were still losing ground. But losing ground was something they had never done before Kelver. The galaxy had learned something that changed the war. Not firepower, not size, not technology alone. The galaxy had learned to look for weakness instead of matching strength. Here is the part that the history files recorded, but most people overlooked. After Kelver, an analysis team went through the Vrath battle recordings one more time. Not looking for tactical data, looking for something else. They found it in the final minutes of the battle. 3 Vrath ships that had escaped the debris field did not go in the direction the Alliance expected. They did not retreat toward Vrath territory. They went somewhere else entirely. A region of space that had never been mapped, never been explored. What was there? Nobody knew for certain at the time. But later reports suggested it might be where the Vrath came from originally. Not a home system. Something older. Something the Vrath themselves might have been running from for far longer than 32 years. The war against the Vrath, it turned out, might not have been conquest at all. It might have been a search for refuge. If that was true, then the galaxy had spent 30 years fighting a species that was itself afraid of something worse. That question sat unanswered for a long time. But it changed how the Alliance thought about what came next. If this opened your eyes to what humanity is capable of when it stops looking at what the enemy has and starts looking for what the enemy lacks, then stay with me because the next story goes even deeper. The galaxy had every advanced civilization, every powerful fleet, every ancient weapon system, and none of it was enough until one species did something simple. Humans looked where nobody else was looking. They found a crack in what everyone believed was unbreakable. And then they sent one ship to prove it. That is the thing about being underestimated. The people doing the underestimating stop watching carefully. And when they stop watching carefully, they stop seeing what is actually coming. The Defiance did not win because it was the most powerful ship in the galaxy. It won because the people inside had understood something that 87 Vrath warships never expected anyone to figure out. If you want more stories like this, hit subscribe right now because new HFYSCIFI stories go up every week on this channel. Every single one of them will keep you watching until the very last second. Hit the like button if humanity just earned your respect today. And drop a comment below answering this question. If you were Captain Okafor and you had one ship against 87, what would you have done differently? I read every single comment. Let me know. And if you want to watch the next story right now, it is waiting for you. One click. You already know you want to see it.